Hi, everyone. Something a little bit different this time, as you can see, in person, here in New York City, with Rand Fishkin, who needs very little introduction, I'm sure, but founder and CEO of SparkToro is what he's famous for these days. But we go way back. And
way back.
Yeah, to the Moz days, 2005, 6?
To the SEO Moz days.
To the SEO Moz days, SEOmoz.org, indeed. Yeah, and as you can see, we hang out sometimes outside of work as well. But we're in New York for SEO Week, and we thought we'd take the opportunity to get together and rent a studio and record something. So
and go to a great pizza place, have a nice walk through a very strange part of Hell's Kitchen.
Whatever neighborhood. Yeah, exactly. But yeah, anyway, it's been great. It's great to see you.
Great to see you too, buddy. This is what it's about. Long friendships. And hopefully being able to help some other folks in our field too.
Let's hope we can come up with something useful. Yeah. So the main thing that we want to talk about today is all this research that you've been doing.
Oh, thanks.
So SparkToro is great, and people should definitely check out the service you offer. But you've been doing this very, very valuable work, I think, for the community at large, analyzing data from Datos.
Yeah.
And
number of other sources too. But yeah, Datos is the big sort of clickstream provider. For anyone who's not familiar with how clickstream data works, in brief, they have essentially a panel of 10 million plus devices that they monitor. So these are both desktops, laptops, mobile phones, and they can see every URL that is visited inside the browser. And then they take those, anonymize them, aggregate them, so you can't identify any human beings and there's no privacy issues. And then they basically chunk that and sell them to folks. So that's what powers a lot of SparkToro's data. And we also get to use it for very interesting research at large scale. So for example, if Google's public officials say, this is happening, we can be like, is that happening?
And find out. Yeah, so I've been referencing this data, but you've been analyzing it. So yeah, I thought maybe we'd start by, what are some of the surprises?
Ooh, actually I was quite surprised to see Google continuing to grow searches as dramatically as they grew them last year. So 2024, according to our data set, just in browsers, so this is not including things like Google Lens or the Google Maps application on a mobile device, just in browsers, Google search grew 22%. It's unimaginable how big that is when you think of Google announcing that they have 5 trillion searches. That means the last trillion
is in the last year.
Was added last year, or close to it. And that is
stunning.
Absolutely both stunning, but also unprecedented. And I think Google themselves announced that in the 5 or 6 years prior to that, the growth was nothing like that. You can see that in 2016, they announced 3 trillion global searches.
Yep.
Now they're at 5. If one of those came last year, that means the 7 intervening years were much slower growing.
And this, I think, underpins something very important, which is some of their public statements about what's going on with the total outbound clicks. Sundar was on the Hard Fork podcast, I think, talking about that they've sent more clicks out to non-Google properties than ever before. And that, on the face of it, seemed tough to square with the rise in zero-click searches and these kind of things. But if query volume is growing that much.
That's right. That's exactly what's happening. So Google can bring down the searches that or the clicks that they send out per search by 20%. And they still are technically sending more traffic to the open web than they did in 2023.
Yeah.
And I think that's exactly what we're seeing. That query growth is making up for the fact that they're sending fewer and fewer clicks per search. But I think that ends right now. You could see the public statement at the earnings call.
Just recently.
Yeah, we're recording this at the end of April. Google just had their earnings call last week, and during that call, a JP Morgan analyst asked about whether they're still sending out more traffic, and the Google response was, now is not the time to get into clicks. Which,
okay, is it not?
Look, I don't know if you've heard a lot of people lie without saying anything, but that's how you do it.
I mean, somebody's had media training.
Yeah, so somebody knows not to tell the truth in that moment.
But what I think is the other bit of narrative that is interesting to put this alongside is obviously the explosion of use of large language model, chat interfaces, non-Google ones, right?
Yeah,
so ChatGPT,
that's right.
Perplexity, Claude, etc. And there's very much a narrative in the SEO space that this is, and we've heard it here at SEO Week, that this is a threat to Google already, and it is eating away at market share. And the narrative is not necessarily at odds with, is not necessarily lined up with what we're actually seeing in the data.
Well, look, you don't even have to have access to any special data. You can go look at Google's earnings report every quarter for the last, what has ChatGPT been out for 4 years now? Show me how it has hurt Google's earnings. Show me where it says, oh, Google didn't make as much revenue this quarter. They haven't had a quarter of even slowing growth. Last quarter was one of their best in the last 4 years.
Yep.
I just don't
But
understand.
in the data when you do have it as well, right? That you can't see market share dropping.
You can't see a decline.
What was your stat? They grew by 4 ChatGPTs last year.
Google grew by the volume of 4 ChatGPTs of search just last year. So ChatGPT would have to go from growing, what is it growing at, 30, 40% a year now? They're going to have to, I don't know, 10x that somehow?
I mean, I actually, it's funny trying to hold both things in your head at once, because I simultaneously think this is the first real challenge to Google that we've seen in our kind of search career. And yet, right now, Google is the game.
Well, here's what I think is true. What's challenging Google is not ChatGPT or Claude or Perplexity. What's challenging Google is AI. And you can see Google essentially deciding internally about 2 years ago to not let themselves be replaced by AI answers from anyone else and to instead become the place where people go for those AI answers.
Yep.
I follow a few people who basically said from the start, look, OpenAI is very impressive. What ChatGPT has accomplished is great. Same with Claude, same with Perplexity. But the people who have the best opportunity to build the absolute best models are Google. Not only because of the amount of the web that they're able to index and crawl copyright free, but also because Google has the data on what people want, what people click on, what they don't click on. And so when you're building a model, knowing that these websites and pages shouldn't be weighted as important as these websites and pages, who can catch up to that?
And they have the distribution, because they have the box that people are conditioned to go and type in.
That's exactly right. Right. And I don't see how someone else takes over the search space. I don't see how, if AI becomes the future of how people want their questions answered and their, sort of discovery served, I don't see how Google isn't the winner in that too.
Yeah. But there is at least an interesting threat. And what I think is most interesting about it is that it is forcing Google to do something different. That they've basically been masters of their own decisions for the last 20 years.
Yeah.
And they might win this, but they are at least being forced to innovate and do new things.
I think that's actually part of what I love about competition, just broadly, right? Like
I'm totally with you on that.
I've been a strong public supporter of the Department of Justice's case against Google, which started in the first Trump administration, continued through the Biden administration, and now has come to a conclusion with a successful outcome, right? Where the DOJ was successfully able to prove to a court that Google did indeed both build a monopoly and abuse their monopoly power in ways that are illegal in the United States. And now we're in the remedy phase, which we'll see if...
And the irony of this happening when there finally is some competition, it has echoes of Microsoft in the 90s, right?
It does. It completely does. But I think the Microsoft case in the 90s is a great corollary because, and this is not to get too inside baseball government stuff, but the reason our industry exists is because of that 90s case. It is very easy for me to imagine, I think a lot of people to imagine, that Microsoft wins that case in 1998 and they create a walled garden of an internet. And the internet that we all experienced over the last 20 years was not the open web, but instead lived inside of the Microsoft...
The descendant of the AOL, whatever.
That's exactly right. Internet Explorer was the dominant property, and they could have easily, in my opinion, kept that monopoly going for a long time. I think they could have quickly and simply crushed competitors like Yahoo and Google.
Yeah.
But instead, they had to pull back because the case, remedies said, hey, you are not allowed to abuse your monopoly power and put the internet inside everyone's computer and then mobile devices, which they also dominated at the time. I think people forget that too.
Yeah. Right. It's all very, very kind of interesting. But I find it interesting to try and line up, on the one hand, what should folks actually be doing?
Yeah,
tactically and strategically on the marketing side.
Yep.
As well as having the eye to the long term. So, what might be true in years to come very hard to predict, I think.
Will, I've always struggled with this speculation I know I'm wearing a t-shirt that says futurist, but I have always struggled with this idea that we as marketers should try and either predict the future or optimize for it. Mm-hmm. I think marketing's job is to follow audiences, not lead them, generally speaking. We benefit most, and I think the brands that we work with benefit the most when we go where our audience and their customers are. Mm-hmm. And we are present in those places rather than trying to say, and I'm guilty of this myself. I'm guilty of being like, hey, I think Mastodon is amazing. Everyone should move to Mastodon from Twitter. Twitter is dying, blah, blah, blah. And then, I probably put a good 100 hours into my Mastodon presence for 6 months, and that's where I did all my...
Not so much anymore.
Yeah. And it didn't win. And it was largely a pointless endeavor. What I should have instead done is say, where's my audience going? Oh, they're mostly going to LinkedIn, Threads, and YouTube. That's where they're leaving Twitter for. I should go invest. Yeah, I should go invest in those platforms and those places, and not try and force
I was casting my
audience.
mind back to the kind of first rise of social media, and that kind of, I don't know if you remember the feeling in 2007, 2008 when so Facebook newsfeed has just appeared.
Right. Yep.
Twitter is just launching.
Yep.
And you remember that insane hockey sticking growth of Twitter, where it just felt like every day some new celebrities on there, some new friends are on there, some new influence.
Yep.
There was something.
Some new government department, metro buses are telling me. Yeah,
and it just felt more and more. You were just dragged there.
Yeah.
By the compelling nature of everybody moving at once, that herd thundering towards it. And that wasn't the experience of Mastodon or really any of the...
Yeah,
the
Threads is probably the closest one, right?
Mm-hmm.
So Threads has grown to, I think Zuckerberg just announced in their earnings call this week, 350 million active users, which is a little more than Twitter's claimed size, but now bigger than what we were able, when we had access to Twitter data at SparkToro, right? So we had the full
feed.
API, we saw everything. This was up until 2023.
Mm-hmm.
And as of January, we were able to validate about 290 million real users of Twitter.
Okay. Threads
is now bigger than that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So,
and it's funny picking apart the different bits, but anyway, I fully agree with that kind of following where people actually are. And there's no point telling them that they're wrong to be there or whatever.
Yeah, I mean,
you can't affect that.
It would be similar to saying like, hey, Microsoft Bing is actually really big. People should be searching on Bing. Let's go be on Bing. Mm. You've never heard a person in search marketing say that, right?
Yep.
But this is similar, right? Like ChatGPT is, I don't know, 1/10 the size of Bing in terms of search volume. Mm-hmm. But it does get used for a lot of things that are not just search. And I think it's also interesting to think about and potentially market and optimize for appearing in the answers that are given by an AI tool, even if it is not in a search style context.
Yeah. Or even if the whatever you want to call it, the query, the
prompt,
input, isn't exactly search like.
Sure.
But that isn't new either. That feels very much to me like the voice search discussion.
Sure.
Where they're talking about all the rising query volume, where quite a lot of that was set a timer or and add
even
something to a shopping list.
Yeah. Like I still see people doing voice searches. What I don't see is voice answers. And I never saw voice answers, right? Yep. Like I think you saw the news that Amazon is shutting down Alexa. They're basically throwing it in the bin and saying like, hey, it never really took off. It was kind of a 1%, of the market.
It certainly didn't take off in a commercially driving fashion.
Exactly right. Yeah. So I think being an early adopter in a bunch of these spaces is fun. It can pay dividends, but very frequently, a lot of us in tech and internet and digital marketing spaces, we adopt too early.
Well, we forget we're not normal.
Yeah.
So one thing I have been struggling with, or I've been challenging myself on, right? So I've been saying, if you are excited by AI, and many folks are like, it's incredible technology and all the rest of it, but if you're specifically excited about the future of AI discovery and search in the broadest sense, that means Google right now. Right, it may not forever, but right now it means Google.
Are you hearing this? This is very good advice.
Most of Google's AI powered. Sometimes you get the actual LLM AI overview,
Right.
but even the rest of it, there's tons of deep learning.
Well, and the AI overview is growing so fast, it's hard to find searches without them now. It's deep. It's deeply weird.
And it's going to get more. I think there's going to be more and more. It's not going to be one thing.
Right.
There's going to be
you're
product
gonna
variations. There's going to be.
you see it
local
inside
variations.
Google Shopping already. You see it inside Maps. Yes, absolutely agree. Here's the one thing I would say on the is your audience using these kinds of things is you can find that out. Like you don't have to use SparkToro, but right, obviously through clickstream data.
Yep.
What I showed at SEO Week at the end of my talk, right, was essentially, hey,
where people spend their time.
SEOs are really into these three platforms. Like you could see those platforms were very, close to the top 10 like most used discovery platforms, right? It went something like, I think for SEOs, it was like Google, YouTube, maybe Reddit was like number 3 or 4, Bing was somewhere in there. And then it's like ChatGPT, Perplexity, Gemini. And then, sorry, not Gemini, Claude. And then I showed people who have landscaping in their bio.
And it didn't look like that.
And it was like, oh yeah, ChatGPT is like the 10th most used discovery platform, and it's used like 30% more than the average American web browser. So maybe you invest a little in there. But if you're not on Pinterest, which was like the number 5 one for landscapers, what are you doing? Like, why are you putting your time and energy into this thing that's not important to your audience when you are putting no energy into a thing that is important? And this is generally what I would say. I think these global stats, they're interesting. They help people like me tell a story. They help media tell a story. They help us understand the ecosystem that we swim in. But they don't say where your audience is. They don't say where you should be marketing. You should be marketing in the places your audience is paying attention, not in whatever the most hot thing is right now. Like there are still opportunities to market in places that have completely fallen off the media radar, like TikTok, which is a huge platform. And now that AI is out, people are like, TikTok. We don't talk about that anymore.
Somehow, yeah. And there's something. I think there's something getting conflated because AI as tool and generative capabilities and like all these kinds of things. That's so kind of radically fast moving and new that it gets. I keep hearing from executives asking for what's our AI strategy.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Right.
Here's my one analogy that I really like between the AI thing and blockchain. Do you remember like 6-7 years ago when blockchain and Web3 and cryptocurrency was super hot, and there were a lot of executives asking, what's our Web3 strategy?
Not so much anymore.
No, nobody's asking about that, and they shouldn't be. I think AI is way more real than Web3 ever was. I think it is real technology that has real use. I think most organizations probably have some degree of something they can or should be doing with it. It probably will solve a problem better than something else will. But what I don't like and would never recommend anyone do is to say, here's a new thing that's hot right now. How are we going to use it? As opposed to, here are our top 10 problems that we need to solve in order to...
And let's look at all the tools that might help us do that.
Yeah, what's the best thing that would help us solve these top 10 problems? Is AI one of them? Then we should definitely consider it. Is AI none of them? Well, maybe we leave it off the list until next year.
So my concern from coming from where we come from, obviously you are less in the SEO game, less in the search game specifically, but SearchPilot staying very focused on search. And I think, I personally think, regardless of what happens to the AI discovery diaspora, if you like, or like ecosystem, the kinds of folks that we work with, specifically the large websites, e-commerce and the like, need to be thinking about search and SEO, even if they're also thinking about AI discovery or whatever else that might look like.
Yeah, I'm curious what SearchPilot obviously, as my understanding of SearchPilot is that at the highest level, you are helping websites to get more traffic and more visibility. In a world where visibility can increase without traffic, how do you measure that? How do you help your clients and convince them to adopt your technology that's helping them, but they can't see it?
Well, there's a couple of interesting, I think broadly two philosophical approaches to that. One is even in a world where click-through rates are declining and the blended search features and all those kinds of things are providing headwinds to clicks out from the Google ecosystem, you still want as much as possible of what's on offer, and actually the opportunity to get ahead of your competition might still be substantial. So there's one element, which is there is still a play to do like traditional type testing and do as well as you can and do better than you were before and blah, blah, blah. The other side of it is actually we can run many of the same kind of experiments, but focusing on impressions.
Right. Oh, okay.
So actually, you can set.
Do you get that from Google Search Console?
Yes.
Okay.
And that we're also from things like Merchant Center. So when we're working in the e-com space, and that's increasingly not just in the shopping tab. That's
I've seen that.
You're right. The popular products, I think.
There's like this new advanced feature where it shows me essentially a shopping style.
So it's pretty wild, and I've actually been talking about this quite a bit because it's less prevalent in the UK right now. So this is kind of a US-centric feature now.
It is US.
And
I didn't see it when I was in Europe. Like you can't get it on your phone.
Anybody outside the US, I would recommend try some US searches. Fire up your VPN and just explore some product searches because it is a very different experience, and I think it is coming to the UK.
Yeah.
Whether it comes to the EU, who knows?
Right.
I don't know how it fits with the regulation, but Brexit dividend, don't know. Anyway, I think the UK is very likely to get this kind of experience.
Yeah, and a lot of the rest of the world.
And that Google broadly wants to be your PLP. Right, it's sortable, it's filterable, it's all products, it's not category pages, it's specific.
Why go to Amazon?
Products.
Why go to Walmart? Google can tell you
which specific product.
Yeah,
and that is all integrated with Merchant Center, which blurs the line between paid and organic in ways that would have horrified 1990s Sergey and Larry.
Oh my God!
It's basically paid inclusion.
It is,
but
it looks a lot like the Amazon searches, right?
Yeah,
like it's sort of row of organic, row of paid, row of organic, row of paid,
and then these grids and whatever else. But you get impression data, and so
so I think
the more that happens. Yeah. The more the tools that Google provides are going to orient around thinking in those terms. And so I think we'll do a bit of both. I think we will be doing some click-based experiments and some impression-based experiments.
To be honest, I think that impressions, weirdly, are the kind of the future of marketing.
Yeah, you said this. Yeah.
Yeah, like I truly believe that the metric that's going to matter in the future is not how much traffic did we get. I almost think traffic is a vanity metric.
Interesting.
Like, yes, some people might be optimizing for it, but I would hesitate to believe that every single e-commerce retailer or service provider or SaaS company or content provider is going to be better than whatever Google builds at convincing people to buy your product from your own website.
So you also, interestingly, sound like a Google ad rep, right? So because I had this conversation with The flow when I started by having a conversation with someone in finance at one of our customers.
Okay.
A finance team in an e-commerce retailer.
Okay.
Who was talking about the inflation in cost per click.
Yep.
Right, running way ahead of like regular inflation, and that they pay more and more and more for clicks year over year, and whether this is going to stack up in even the medium term in their marketing mix. And I took that conversation to some folks I know who run paid search campaigns for these same kind of massive scale enterprise retailers.
Okay.
And their answer was, when you get high enough inside Google that you're actually talking to real strategists, they say, we want to charge more and more, and it's our job to be valuable enough
Yeah.
that's worth it.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's the same argument. They're like, clicks are a vanity metric. Like, clicks are not what you care about. So if we can send you traffic that converts better, we can charge more for it.
And so the way I think Google thinks about this is, and you heard them describe this on the earnings call, the AI overviews are making people search more and more iteratively inside Google. They get all the answers that they need, and then they choose to buy the product at the end of that cycle. And so this fits very nicely with Google's, not supposed to tap the mic, with Google's strategy of like, hey, let's be the place where people not only sort of search and discover.
Discovery, all the consideration, everything.
Right? Yeah. That's right. So the conversion rate optimization now is happening inside of the Google ecosystem. And I would argue it's happening already inside of TikTok. It already happens inside of Amazon, definitely does.
For sure.
It already happens inside of eBay. It already happens inside of Walmart. Like, if you're in those places, for my industry, right? For Steam, for video games.
Yep.
Steam is where all of my marketing efforts will go, right? For our video game.
You're not trying to sell people on the concept of getting a game from Steam.
No. I'm not going to try and rank in Google for top 10 video games, whatever. Like, none of that crap. I'm not even going to do a lot of content creation. I don't really need people to ever visit our website. That's kind of a waste of time.
Yep.
What I want them to do is go to the Steam store, the Nintendo Switch store, the PlayStation store.
See good reviews, see whatever else it might be.
Exactly.
Yep.
And see that, like, a great trailer, see a great description, see great reviews, see high ratings, be recommended our game more and more in their discovery queues. And I would argue that's exactly what's going on inside of all of these other walled garden ecosystems that, going back to our earlier conversation, they're trying to be AOL in the 90s. They're trying to do what Microsoft was told they couldn't do.
They're going to continue trying to be a monopoly.
That's exactly right. And then we in marketing world are not going to be able to do digital marketing the way we did it for a quarter century. We're not going to be optimizing for, hey, I want to rank higher so I get more clicks, so I get more traffic, and then I turn more of the traffic into conversions.
Yep.
We're just going to be worried about, how do I show up in these platforms so that I convert people the highest? How do I make my brand the preferred brand? Those are totally different conversations.
Yeah, and that works for SaaS. It works for e-commerce. There's a big danger zone, I think, in the media side, where which I mean is not like it's without its challenges up to this point, but I'm definitely, it's less the game we're playing, but definitely that concerned in that space of that content is necessary to feed all of this. And if you completely destroy it.
But where should it be, right? Like, Amanda and I think about this a whole lot, where we say, hey, we have this message that we're putting out there, right? So we want to talk about zero-click marketing and the future of the world where traffic is basically dying or ending, and instead everything's going to take place in these platforms, and you only really see the click at the very end of the life cycle. Is that a conversation that should entirely happen on SparkToro's blog? Should it happen in the videos that we create, that we put on Wistia and host on our own site? That was the Moz strategy, right?
Yeah, worked great.
Yeah, that was the distilled strategy, right? That was whatever. See your interactive strategy. Like, all these people, that's how we did it. And now we're basically saying, wait, maybe we need to drink our own Kool-Aid here, and
needs to be everywhere.
We put that on YouTube. We put it on Blue Sky. We put it on Threads. We put it on LinkedIn. We put it on Twitter. We put it on Facebook. We put it on Reddit. We try and pitch media about it. We do interviews and webinars and podcasts about it. And we know that language models are going to pick up all of these diverse sources. And you can see this happening inside of Google, like, very actively. For years, we never ranked anywhere for audience research. Now, I think we're number one for, like, audience research software, audience research. Not that being number one helps us at all. It sends no clicks, like, none at all. I can't tell you how few people search for that. Yeah, great job, us. But it's because we didn't do link building and sort of classic SEO. Amanda's never done SEO in her life. But we talk about our topic and our brand in all the places where our audience pays attention. And that's what gets picked up by the model, and that's what gets turned into discoverability.
For good or bad. I mean, that's the good example. I don't know if you saw some of the. I saw Lily was talking about this the other day. It turns out that they're incredibly gullible.
Oh yeah,
right. And that you just post something on LinkedIn or whatever,
Reddit,
and then you search for it, and it's like, yeah, that looks true. So,
I mean, I've seen some great examples where people, the United States Vice President J.D. Vance, like Reddit essentially. What's the strategy that they use? Flood the zone.
Right. It's like the old school Google bombing.
Yeah. They flooded the zone with a specific type of altered photo of J.D. Vance, and now if you ask ChatGPT or any of these to create an image of him, it's like this weird fat face baby thing, and like it just this is all malleable, and I think it does pay for us to understand how to influence all of these platforms because we can take advantage of it, and also presumably some of these loopholes will close. I saw they're rolling back ChatGPT 4.0 because of
too opinionated or too.
No, it's too sycophantic.
The opposite. Right?
Yeah. It basically, you tell it anything, and it's like, oh my God, Will, you are so smart.
Which
my God, how did you get so handsome?
So you're very popular. Yeah. And that's a weird thing that hasn't come up as much in what I've seen so far. Is that should be a differentiator for Google as well. Their spam fighting capabilities are, will be. Right? Nobody else is fighting spam at the scale that.
Well, because I mean, here's one of the things, and this was brought up in the Department of Justice trial, which is Google has this data not just on what ranks, but also what people click on, and perhaps most importantly, what they click back on and what they don't. So when someone, does really well. There was a guy who gave a talk after mine at SEO Week, and he was basically like, hey, we built this big website.
We generated a ton of stuff.
Yeah, we generated a ton of content using AI about which animal fights which animal and wins, right? And got lots of traffic from it, which I sort of had the, okay, should you be talking about this? Is this interesting? Regardless, right? He was successful. Yeah. Like, it was interesting to see how he did it. And, Google will be able to identify, hey, when people click on this website, they click the back button. When they click on this website, they stay, they make progress, they sort of complete their...
I'm slightly concerned that this relies on humans in the broadest, in the population not being impressed by terrible content. Right, the populism suggests that
you make a great point. I don't know if anyone has hung around the United States of America, but recently it would indicate that perhaps poorly generated AI content, the brain rot is real, right? The brain rot is real.
People's preferences en masse are not, well, I mean, you can make your own judgment about how trustworthy
Well, but here's what I would say around that. I think it's fine if Google's data tells them, hey, this AI generated junk when people ask if 100 gorillas fight 100 grizzlies, which one wins? Yeah. Great, send them there. But if somebody says, I want to analyze soil samples for the right substrate chemicals.
And take that a bit more seriously.
Well, it's not take it more seriously. It's use the same algorithm and see what do the people who look for that click on and convert to, right? Where do they, they sign up for this ag tech company's email newsletter. They, end up contacting sales at these firms.
Right.
Okay, well, that's where we should send people, and let's not send them to the AI generated junk.
A little pivot, but I'm interested in your view of what data is going to be available in all of these areas. So there's very little data available from the LLM platforms.
This is because they don't yet have advertising.
Yeah.
So as soon as that comes, and it's coming soon, no matter what Sam Altman said 5 years ago about how much he hates ads and
he
things
said it
like
again recently, but I mean, they all say that.
They all say that until they get them.
They're capitalists.
They're complicated. But once advertising exists, I think you'll see exactly what you see with Google, which is they will work hard to provide metrics that give brands and marketers a reason to invest and pay attention to those platforms.
Yep, I think that's fair.
And I think that is not far away. It would shock me if 5 years from now we don't have data on here's how many times your brand showed up in a ChatGPT answer, and also here's how many times ChatGPT was asked broadly about questions in this style or around this arena. Because they want to show you that so that you will go buy advertising.
Allocate dollars there. Right.
Allocate dollars to influence people, exactly.
And what about the Google side? So there's been a lot of, anytime any Googler is available to the SEO community, there's questions of, can we have AI overview data in Search Console?
I don't know. I'm not industry insider enough to have any theories on that. Like, I've been out of SEO too long. But I would say, broadly, my guess is if nothing else puts pressure on them, the competitive pressure from when the other AI tools start to provide that data will put that pressure on them.
Yeah. I suspect that there's also a little bit of siloing in Google internally.
Oh, sure.
And so I think some of what will help in that is as the teams behind the AI stuff become more central, because they're not the search teams. Right, for the most part.
Yeah, interesting point.
And so,
like the people who are doing answer engineering are not the people who worked on search quality.
I don't think so.
Yeah, interesting.
I
didn't know that.
I think it's different folks, and it's certainly they don't have it's not joined up with.
Is it pulling directly from Gemini? Like if you
I don't believe it's the publicly available regular Gemini.
Okay. Fancy advanced internal Gemini.
It probably comes off the same base model, or I think it is Gemini in some form, but
it's burning the same fossil fuels at some place in Oregon or whatever.
I think actually one of the interesting things about the Gemini piece is there's certain ways that I think Gemini is more capable than the
AI overviews.
Yeah. And so I think there is a little bit of arms race within its internal competitive pressure. I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see how the internal dynamics play out, because they relatively recently merged the Google Brain and DeepMind and put that all under Demis, I think. And like Jeff Dean has moved into a somewhat a different role. The battle for budgets and allocation and everything else. There was a fascinating interview with Jeff Dean on, I think it was the Dwarkesh Patel podcast.
Okay.
Jeff Dean and one of his colleagues, who I keep forgetting the name of, were on this like long form discussion. And one of the things they said that was really interesting was in the early days, they thought that the best way to get innovation was to have tons of teams working on tons of things and see which projects played out.
Yeah.
Which makes sense, except that extreme amounts of compute are needed for success.
Oh, I see.
They had to pick some winners, because if you give everybody a little bit of compute, nobody manages to make any models that can do anything. You have to give tons of compute.
Although now I keep seeing incredible results come from very small compute power versions of LLMs, which
there'll be
granted,
but at least at one stage of this evolution, they had to be like, no, we can't give you all like 100th of the thing. We have to have like.
Anyway, 90. I'm glad you brought this up, because this goes back to why I don't care about government efficiency.
Lunchtime conversation.
No, I'm just saying you got to throw a bunch of stuff at a bunch of different projects, and some of it'll work and some of it won't work, and then you invest in the things that do work, and you just don't worry about things that don't work. I don't know. It's organizational design, people. Government efficiency is like I don't know. It's like a boogeyman to me. Just makes no sense.
Well, we could talk about that for an hour, but we should probably start to bring things to a close. But
okay. I know you have other stuff on your list, so don't let me stop you.
I mean, I think we covered a lot of what we were hoping to do. Maybe just to wrap up on the topic is, what are you most optimistic about in the web marketing search broadly?
Ooh, yeah, great question. I'm such a pessimist these days. That's why
I'm pulling you into the.
Okay. I think that. The rise of LLMs will make humans who want to stand out have to put in their best effort, but also I don't think long term for the you want to call it, like the most important things in society, whether that's like high-level purchase decisions or getting important jobs or making great movies and television shows and media. I don't think any of that stuff is being replaced by AI. I think it's being pushed to be better by AI, and I think it is being assisted.
Yeah.
But I don't think it is I don't think those jobs are going anywhere. I still have yet to see, Will, I don't know if you have, but I still have yet to see a single article, piece of content, video, even an image that was created by AI that I thought, man, I need to share that. I need to whatever, send that to my grandfather, post it to Blue Sky, text my friend Will about it.
Yep.
Not once, not, in all the years that AI has been going, and we've had a good number of them now. Yep. Like it would have graduated high school. So I think that human created content, thank God, is going to survive the AI apocalypse. That is my optimistic prediction.
I hope so. I'm certainly very excited about the capabilities of humans augmented by this stuff.
Sure, yeah. Like a bunch of the research that I showed on stage today, I could not have afforded to have someone manually hand classify enough of the queries that I analyzed and make the graphs that I needed. I had to use AI.
Yeah,
and
I had a great experience of this with Google's Colab product, which is like Python in little in a spreadsheet essentially, and it's got to generate code experience, and it was completely one-shotting the things that I needed to do, and it made me way more powerful in that context. Yeah. And but it's nowhere near thinking about what that analysis needs to do or like replacing the task. It's just making it better.
I'm very excited for the day when I can put a little earpiece in my ear and speak any language. Yeah. And I think that day might not be, it might be in my lifetime.
Yeah, well, I mean, it might be. I mean, I could see somebody coming out with that like anytime. Like that could be quite close.
Oh my God, because my Italian is just awful and it's so embarrassing. I know, I have to keep working on it. I have a tutor that I hired now, and gosh, it's still tough.
Let's hope it comes. We should wrap up. You talked about your content is everywhere these days, but where are you most engaged? Where can people find you and make sure they follow?
If you're on Blue Sky, that's where I post the most. If you're on LinkedIn, that's where I would say I post like my most important stuff each week.
Yep.
And then if you like video games about being a chef in a magical version of 1960s Italy and foraging and fighting monsters and collecting ingredients, you should check out snackbarstudio.com, where you can sign up for the email list. I know I said I wouldn't send people the website, but we don't have a Steam page yet, so you got to go there. And then for SparkToro, I certainly invite folks to come check out SparkToro. The new version of it is launching by the time this podcast comes out. It'll be there. It is really beautiful. Casey did a beautiful job with it, and it can show you exactly this data on like, hey, landscapers don't use these AI tools. SEOs do. That is at SparkToro.com.
Amazing. Thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure, Will. Thanks for having me.